The cold air of the prison cell smelled of iron and dust. Chains rattled against the stone floor as the alien girl moved her hands. Her wrists were raw and bruised from the tight metal cuffs. She closed her eyes and told herself again and again that she must be strong. Pain was coming. She knew it, and she must be ready. Her people had spoken about humans for years. They said humans were cruel, violent, and selfish. They said humans liked to break others just to watch them suffer. So when the soldiers dragged her from the ruins of her home and threw her into this place, she expected nothing different. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her face calm. If torture was coming, she would not let them see her fear. Hours passed, or maybe days, she could not tell. The light from a small barred window never changed much. Sometimes footsteps came, sometimes voices whispered outside her door. But no one entered. She was left alone with her thoughts and her fear. Every sound made her flinch, expecting sharp tools, whips, or burning fire. Finally, the door creaked open. The sound was louder than thunder in the silent cell. She braced herself, shoulders stiff, eyes narrowed. But instead of a group of soldiers, only one man stepped inside. He was human, tall, with tired eyes and rough clothes. He carried no weapons, only a small lamp that lit his face. He looked at her not with hate, but with something strange, something she could not name. The girl hissed and pulled at her chains. "Do what you came to do," she whispered under her breath. The man did not answer. He only set the lamp on the floor. He studied her like she was not a prisoner, but a person. That look made her chest tighten. It was too strange, too soft, too wrong. Instead of hurting her, the man crouched down and unlocked the chain from the wall. Her eyes widened, but she did not move. Why would a human free her? This had to be a trick. Still, the heavy chain fell away and her hands felt lighter. Her skin burned with freedom she did not trust. The man slid a piece of bread across the floor. She stared at it, hunger clawing at her stomach. But she pushed it back with her foot. Poison, she thought, or worse, a test. The man said nothing. He only left the bread there and waited. His silence was louder than any words. Minutes passed, and finally her hunger broke her pride. She picked up the bread and took a bite. It was real, soft, warm bread. No poison, no trick. Her body trembled as she ate. The man simply nodded once, like he was satisfied. Then he stood up and turned toward the door. "Wait." Her voice cracked, though she hated herself for saying it. The man stopped and looked back. His eyes were heavy, like someone who carried too many memories. But they were not cruel. They were sad. She did not ask him why he gave her food. She did not ask why he freed her chains. Her pride would not let her. But a small crack formed inside her belief. Maybe, just maybe, not all humans were monsters. The door closed, and she was left alone again. The bread sat in her hands, half-eaten. Her body was warmer now, her heart less certain. She whispered to herself, "Why? Why would he help me?" But no answer came, only silence. That night, she dreamed of the man's eyes. Not cruel, not cold, but sad and human. And for the first time since her capture, she felt something dangerous. Not anger, not fear, but a spark of hope. The alien girl turned on the hard floor, chains still heavy but looser than before. Somewhere deep inside her mind a thought whispered. She expected torture, but maybe, just maybe, there's something else waiting. The cell door opened again the next day. The same man returned, carrying a small bundle in his hands. The alien girl pressed herself against the far wall, her chains clinking softly. She told herself not to look at him, not to trust him. But her eyes betrayed her, sliding to the bread in his hand and the flask of water tied with rope. He crouched once more, setting the items gently on the floor. His movements were calm, without threat, without cruelty. The girl narrowed her eyes, her voice low. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her tone sharp. The man did not reply, only gave a small shrug. He pushed the food closer to her reach and sat back against the wall. It was strange, watching him sit there as if he belonged in the shadows beside her. For the first time, She noticed his scars, thin white lines across his hands. Marks of old battles, stories she did not know. She ate the bread again, slowly, her suspicion still alive but weaker than before. The water was cool against her dry throat. She felt her body thank her, though her mind screamed that it was still a trick. The man watched, not with hunger, not with cruelty, but with quiet patience. He seemed to understand her fear, though he never spoke a word. Finally she asked, "What do you want from me?" Her voice echoed in the stone room. The man lifted his eyes to hers and shook his head. "I want nothing," he whispered softly, his voice rough and broken. Her breath caught, because those were not words of a torturer. Those were words of someone carrying a wound. She stared at him, confused, her thoughts twisting like tangled vines. Her people said humans always wanted something, power, control, blood. But here was one who gave food, who freed her chains, who asked for nothing. It was impossible, and yet it was happening. The man stood and motioned to the door. She stiffened, expecting soldiers, expecting the end of this strange kindness. But when the door opened, there were no guards, no traps. Only a dark hallway leading to another world. He pointed toward it and spoke again. "You cannot stay here. It is not safe." His words were soft, but urgent. Her chest tightened, her heart fighting between fear and the pull of freedom. He extended a hand, palm open, waiting. The alien girl trembled, every lesson of her people screaming against this moment. But her hunger, her curiosity, and that dangerous spark of hope pushed her forward. She placed her chained wrist in his hand. The touch was warm, strong, steady. Not the hand of a monster, but of someone trying to protect. They walked together through the dark corridor. Her steps slow, uncertain, her eyes wide at the flickering lights above. Every shadow felt like a soldier waiting to strike. Every corner felt like a trap. But the man never let go of her hand. He moved with caution, guiding her through the silence. At last they reached a door hidden behind a broken wall. He pushed it open and led her into the night. Cold rain fell from the sky, soaking her hair and skin. She gasped, lifting her face upward. It had been so long since she felt the sky. The drops ran down her cheeks like tears she could not shed. The human wrapped a rough coat around her shoulders. The fabric heavy but warm. She clutched it tight, eyes darting around the ruined streets. Broken machines lay scattered, buildings burned and hollow. It was a dead city, silent except for the rain. Her people had told her humans only built prisons and weapons. But this ruin looked like a place that had already suffered too much. "Where are you taking me?" she whispered. The man did not answer at first, his gaze scanning the shadows. Finally he said, "Somewhere safe." The words felt unreal, like a dream her mind created to soften the truth. Yet his grip stayed steady, pulling her forward step by step. They reached a small shelter hidden under the ruins. He opened the door and guided her inside. Warmth met her skin. There was fire burning in an old stove. A blanket lay folded on a chair, and food rested on a wooden table. It was not much, but compared to the cell, it felt like a palace. Her heart pounded as she looked around. This was not torture, this was a home. She sat down, clutching the blanket to her chest. The human placed food before her again. He finally spoke more than a few words, his voice low. "I lost my family," he said, eyes fixed on the fire. "I could not save them, but maybe I can save you." The alien girl froze, her heart torn between anger and pity. This man, this strange human, was not a soldier to her. He was something else, something dangerous in a different way. He was proof that her people might have been wrong. As she drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought stayed with her. She had expected pain, chains, and torture, but instead, she found a human who offered her warmth, food, and shelter, and that terrified her more than any weapon ever could. The fire crackled softly in the old stove. Shadows danced along the walls of the shelter. The alien girl sat wrapped in the blanket, her body still trembling. She had never seen a human home before. She expected cages, sharp tools, and iron walls. Instead, she found warmth, the smell of food, and silence that was not cruel. The man moved quietly around the room, setting things in place. He did not stare at her the way soldiers did. He did not bark orders or raise weapons. He simply worked as if she was not a prisoner, but a guest. This confused her more than chains ever could. Her eyes wandered to the table where strange objects rested. Photographs, faded and torn, showing smiling faces. A woman and a child, both human, both gone now. The alien girl tilted her head, feeling something stir in her chest. It was not fear, not anger, but something softer. Pity, maybe, or curiosity. She asked, "Who are they?" Her voice was soft, almost unwilling to leave her lips. The man froze for a moment before answering. "My family," he whispered, his hand tightening on the edge of the frame. "They are not here anymore." The alien girl felt the weight in his tone. She knew loss. She knew the silence of absence. But hearing it from a human was different. Her people never spoke of humans having hearts. Yet here was one with a wound deeper than any blade. That night the rain tapped against the roof like steady drums. She lay on a small cot, her chain still loose around her wrists. She closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. Memories of fire, capture, and fear twisted in her mind. She woke with a start, her body shaking from a dream of torture. The man was there, sitting near the fire, awake. He looked at her with steady eyes, not cruel, not mocking. "Bad dreams," he said softly, more as a statement than a question. She nodded, unable to speak. For a moment she hated him, because his calmness made her fear look weak. But at the same time, a strange comfort grew in his presence. Days passed in the shelter. Each day he brought food, shared water, gave her space. He never locked the door, never called soldiers, never hurt her. Her suspicion fought against the kindness. She told herself again and again, "It is a trick." But every sunrise came, and still no torture arrived. Her heart began to waver. The walls she built inside her mind started to crack. One evening, as the fire glowed bright, she dared to ask, "Why me? Why save me?" The man sat silent for a long time, staring into the flames. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Because I could not save them." He pointed toward the photographs, his hand trembling. The alien girl felt a strange ache in her chest. This human had lost everything, yet still chose to protect her. It made no sense, and yet it felt real. She began to notice the small details. How he placed food near her without forcing her to take it. How he gave her the blanket first before sitting near the fire himself. How his eyes always carried sadness, not cruelty. He was broken, but not dangerous. At least, not in the way she was taught to fear. Still, fear did not leave her completely. At night she dreamed of soldiers finding them. She dreamed of pain and chains waiting just outside. Sometimes she woke in silence, staring at the man, wondering if he would betray her tomorrow. And sometimes she wondered if he already betrayed himself by saving her. The world outside remained dangerous. She could hear distant sounds of patrols, engines humming in the ruins. The man always stayed alert, his ear tuned to every sound. She realized he was protecting her not just from hunger, but from his own kind. That thought terrified her, because if humans could turn against humans, then nothing was certain. One afternoon, when the rain stopped, he opened the small window. Fresh air swept inside, carrying the smell of wet earth. The alien girl stepped closer, her eyes wide. She had not breathed free air since her capture. The wind touched her face, and she almost cried. The man said nothing, only let her stand there. That silent kindness was louder than any promise. In her heart, confusion grew stronger. She expected torture, but instead she found warmth. She expected pain, but instead she found shelter. And most dangerous of all, she expected hate, but instead she found something closer to trust. As night fell, she whispered to herself while lying on the cot, "If this is a dream, let it never end. But deep down, she knew dreams were fragile. And soon, the outside world would break into this fragile shelter, bringing with it choices neither of them were ready to face. The nights grew colder inside the shelter. The fire kept them warm, but not safe. The alien girl still woke from her dreams with a sharp cry. She dreamed of cages, knives, and human soldiers laughing in the dark. Even when she opened her eyes and saw the man sitting quietly by the fire, the fear did not fade. The man never scolded her, never mocked her. He only watched, silent and patient, as if he understood nightmares. Sometimes he gave her water, sometimes he gave her space. And that patience was more frightening than cruelty, because cruelty she expected, but kindness confused her heart. One morning, she asked him directly, "Why are you still keeping me here? You could turn me over and get a reward." Her words were sharp, filled with suspicion. The man looked up, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I do not care about rewards," he said softly. "They cannot give me back what I lost." His words carried a truth she could not deny. Still, the alien girl could not silence her fear. She thought about running when he slept. She thought about finding her way back to the ruins of her people. But each time she looked at the door, her legs would not move. Something inside whispered that outside was worse than inside. That maybe this human, broken as he was, offered a safer place than the world beyond. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, her walls weakened. She began to ask him questions, simple ones, about his world. "What is that?" she asked once, pointing to a cracked book on the shelf. He explained it was a story about heroes and journeys. She listened carefully, realizing humans told tales just like her people did. Another day she asked, "Why do you light the fire every night?" He answered, "Because the dark is colder than we can bear." And in his words, she heard more than survival. She heard loneliness. Yet fear remained a shadow in her heart. One evening, when the rain stopped and the night was silent, she spoke again. "You could still be lying," she said, her voice trembling. "You could still be waiting for the right moment to hurt me." The man looked at her for a long time before replying. "If I wanted to hurt you, I already would have." The words cut through her chest like a blade, because deep inside, she knew he was right. And that truth was more terrifying than any lie. That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake on the cot, staring at the wooden ceiling. Her mind fought against itself. One side whispered he was dangerous. The other side whispered he was different. She turned over and watched him as he sat near the fire. His shoulders heavy, his hands resting against his face. He looked more like a prisoner than a guard, more like a man hiding from the world than a soldier of it. When he finally noticed her watching, he asked softly, "Do you think all humans are the same?" She hesitated, her throat dry. "Yes," she whispered. "That is what I was taught." The man shook his head slowly. "Then your teachers were wrong." His words were simple, but they echoed in her chest long after the fire burned low. The next morning, she stepped outside the shelter with him. The ruins stretched wide, broken machines and shattered glass across the ground. The air was heavy with smoke, though the sky was clear. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and looked at him. "This place, it feels like your people suffered here too," she said. He nodded once, his eyes on the ruins. "We all suffer, no matter what world we come from," he replied. His honesty shook her, because it sounded so close to what her people believed about their own struggles. Back inside, she sat near the fire again. Her fear was still alive, but smaller, weaker. It no longer screamed inside her mind, it whispered instead. And the whisper was easier to fight. For the first time, she admitted something to herself. She did not want to leave, not yet, because in the middle of her fear, she had found something unexpected. A human who made her feel safe, even if she did not want to believe it. As the night deepened, she closed her eyes and let the warmth of the fire touch her face. But in her heart, she knew peace was fragile, and that somewhere in the ruins beyond their shelter, danger was moving closer. Fear would soon return, not from within her, but from the world outside. The The fire burned low inside the shelter, its glow painting the walls in gold and red. The alien girl sat quietly on the cot, watching the man as he cleaned an old piece of metal. His hands were steady, but his eyes were far away, lost in some memory she could not see. For days she had felt the weight of his silence, and tonight it pressed down heavier than before. She leaned forward, her voice soft but demanding. "You saved me. You gave me food. You gave me a place to sleep. But why?" The man froze, his hands tightening around the scrap of metal. His jaw clenched, his breath heavy. For a long time he did not answer. Then, slowly, he placed the metal aside and turned toward the fire. "I was a soldier," he whispered, his voice cracking. The alien girl felt her chest tighten. Her people told her soldiers were the worst of humans. Cold, merciless, born only to kill. And now she sat under the same roof as one of them. "I fought in the war," he continued, his gaze locked on the flames. "I believed what they told me, that your kind was dangerous, that we had to destroy you before you destroyed us." His hand shook as he picked up the photograph of the woman and child. "I followed orders, I burned villages, I killed without thinking." His words hit her like stones. Her throat closed, rage rising like fire in her veins. She wanted to scream, to curse him, to remind him of every life his kind had taken. But his eyes stopped her. They were not proud eyes, they were haunted ones. "One day," he said, voice breaking, "the war took everything from me too." He held up the photograph. They were gone in one night, lost in the flames I helped create. The silence that followed was heavy. The alien girl's anger twisted into confusion. He was both killer and victim, both monster and mourner. Her mind could not fit him into one truth. She whispered, "Why me, then? Why not kill me too?" The man turned to her, and for the first time his eyes were wet with tears. "Because when I saw you, I saw her," he said, pointing at the picture of his daughter. "You looked at me the same way she once did, with fear, with pain, with hope. I could not let another child suffer the way mine did." The alien girl felt her breath falter. Her heart told her to hate him, but another part whispered something she could not admit. She saw the scarred soldier who destroyed, but also the broken father who lost. He was both, and that made him more dangerous than any blade. Because if even a soldier could regret, then maybe everything she knew about humans was incomplete. For hours they sat in silence. The man by the fire, the girl on the cot, both trapped by memories of war. Her chains lay loose around her wrists, a reminder of her fear. But tonight, she did not think about escape. Tonight, she thought about the story he had revealed. The next morning, the world outside reminded them that safety was fragile. Engines roared in the distance, heavy boots striking against broken stone. The alien girl froze, her blood turning cold. The man cursed under his breath and grabbed a small rifle from under the table. His hands were steady, though his eyes showed dread. "They are searching," he said, his voice low and urgent. "They know you are alive." The girl's chest tightened, her mind filling with panic. This was the moment she feared, the moment when kindness would turn to betrayal. Would he hand her over to save himself? Would he prove to be like all the others? But the man stood firm, his rifle aimed at the door. "They will not take you," he whispered. "Not while I still breathe." Her eyes widened, her throat dry. He was not turning her in. He was preparing to fight his own kind for her. In that moment, the alien girl understood the weight of his secret. He was not just a soldier who fought against her people. He was now a soldier fighting against his own, and he was willing to die for the choice he made. Her fear twisted into something new. Not trust, not love, but a fragile bond born from shared pain. She moved closer to him, her voice shaking but strong. "Then I will fight with you," she said. The man looked at her, surprise flashing across his tired face. But then he nodded, a small spark of hope in his haunted eyes. The fire burned low again, the night pressing heavy outside. And together they waited, two enemies bound by war, loss, and a fragile promise, knowing that when the door finally opened, the world would never be the same. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. But outside the shelter, the world was waking with danger. Engines growled in the distance, echoing through the ruined city like thunder. The alien girl sat near the window, her hands trembling as she gripped the blanket. Her eyes followed every shadow, every flicker of movement. She could feel the storm approaching, and this time no dream would wake her from it. The man stood near the door, the rifle steady in his hands. His jaw was set, his eyes cold and sharp. She had seen him look sad, broken, even kind, but now she saw something else. The soldier he once was. It terrified her, yet she also knew it was the only thing that could keep her alive. "They are close," he muttered, his ear tuned to the night. The alien girl swallowed hard, fear clawing at her throat. "Your people," she whispered, "they will kill me." The man shook his head, his voice low and firm. "Not while I still breathe." The engines grew louder, boots striking against the broken streets. The girl pressed her back against the wall, her heart racing. She thought of chains, cages, fire, and screams. She thought of every nightmare waiting just outside. But when she looked at the man, she saw something she never expected: defiance. He was ready to stand against his own kind, to fight for her. The thought was impossible, yet here it was, standing in front of her with a rifle. The door rattled once, then again. The girl's breath caught in her chest. The man raised the rifle, his fingers steady on the trigger. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice sharp like steel. The door burst open and soldiers poured inside, their armor shining under the flickering firelight. Their weapons aimed at the girl, their voices barking commands. "Step away from the alien," one shouted. "Hand her over, and you will live," another added. But the man did not move. His stance was firm, his eyes blazing with anger. "She is not yours to take," he growled. The soldiers laughed, cruel and mocking. "You betray your own people for her?" They sneered. The man's reply was calm but deadly. "I already lost everything to this war. I will not lose her too." Gunfire erupted, echoing like thunder inside the small shelter. The girl screamed and dropped to the floor, covering her ears. But the man moved with precision, every shot finding its mark. He was no longer the broken figure by the fire. He was the soldier reborn. Yet this time he did not fight for orders. He fought for her. The soldiers fell one by one, but more filled the doorway. The girl's fear twisted into something fierce. She grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground. Her chains clinked as she stood, her body shaking but her spirit burning. She swung at a soldier who came too close, striking his helmet with all her strength. The impact sent him staggering back, and for the first time, she felt power instead of weakness. The man glanced at her, surprise flashing in his eyes. But then he nodded, a silent acknowledgement that she was no longer just a prisoner. They fought together, human and alien, once enemies, now side by side. The air was thick with smoke and fire. The floor slick with water from the rain and the blood of soldiers who underestimated them. Finally, the gunfire faded, the last soldier collapsing to the ground. The girl stood gasping, her chest heaving, the metal piece still in her hand. The man lowered his rifle, his face pale, his body trembling with exhaustion. They looked at each other in the silence that followed. No words were spoken, but the truth was clear. They had survived together, and survival bound them stronger than any chain. But the danger was not over. Outside, more engines roared, more lights cut through the ruins. The man cursed, sweat dripping down his forehead. "They will not stop. They will keep coming," he said. The girl's eyes widened, fear returning like ice in her veins. "Then what do we do?" she asked, her voice breaking. The man looked at her, his expression steady despite the chaos. "We run," he said firmly. "We leave this place and we never look back." Her heart raced, fear and hope clashing in her chest. She nodded, gripping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The man grabbed his rifle and opened the back door. The night air rushed in, cold and damp, carrying the smell of smoke and rain. Together they stepped out into the darkness. Two fugitives bound by loss, defiance, and a fragile trust. Every shadow was danger. Every step was a risk. But for the first time, she was not running alone. For the first time, she ran with someone who chose her. And that made all the difference. The night swallowed them as they ran. The ruined streets stretched endlessly, broken walls rising like jagged teeth around them. Engines growled behind, voices shouted in the distance, lights sweeping across the darkness. The alien girl's breath came in sharp gasps, her legs burning, her chains rattling with every step. But the man never let go of her hand, pulling her forward, steady and strong. They darted through alleys, past shattered machines, and burned-out vehicles. Every corner felt like a trap. Every shadow held the weight of fear. But together they kept moving, their steps in sync. The man's eyes scanned the horizon, always searching, always guarding. And though her body screamed with exhaustion, the girl felt something she had never known before. Not just fear, but belonging. At last they reached the edge of the ruins. A broken fence stretched ahead, beyond it fields overgrown with wild grass. The engines were still behind them. Louder now, soldiers closing in. The man turned, raising his rifle, his face set with grim determination. "Go," he told her, his voice sharp. "Run, I will hold them back." The girl froze, her heart clenching in her chest. She had expected this moment, that humans would save themselves first, that kindness would end when death approached. But his eyes told her something different. He was ready to die for her. She shook her head violently, tears burning in her eyes. "No," she cried, her voice breaking. "If you stay, I stay. We survive together or not at all." The man stared at her, surprise flickering in his tired gaze. Then slowly, a faint smile touched his lips. For the first time since she met him, he did not look haunted. He looked alive. Together they pushed forward, slipping through the fence. The wild grass rose around them, swallowing their figures in green shadows. Behind them, the soldiers reached the fence, their lights sweeping across the field. But the night was deep, and the fugitives vanished into its embrace. They walked for hours, guided only by the stars and the sound of their own breath. The girl stumbled often, but the man steadied her each time. Her chains cut at her wrists, but she no longer felt like a prisoner. The blanket around her shoulders smelled of smoke and rain. But to her, it felt like armor. When dawn finally broke, the world stretched before them. Rolling hills, broken highways, and a horizon glowing with pale light. The girl stopped, staring at the sunrise with wide eyes. She had not seen such light since before her capture. Her chest tightened, a strange warmth flooding her. "This is freedom," she whispered. The man stood beside her, his rifle slung across his back. "Not yet," he said softly, "but soon." They found an abandoned farmhouse at the edge of the fields. The roof was cracked, the windows broken, but inside there was space to breathe. The girl sat on the floor, her body aching, but her heart restless. She turned to him, her voice low. "Where will we go?" The man leaned against the wall, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Farther than they can follow," he replied. "A place where their war cannot reach us." The girl studied him, the soldier who became her protector. She remembered the fear she felt when she first saw him. She remembered the bread, the fire, the silence. She remembered the truth he revealed, the battles he fought, the sorrow he carried. And now she saw something else, a promise. For a long time, they sat in silence. The fire they built in the broken hearth flickered gently. The girl wrapped the blanket tighter around herself and whispered, "I thought humans were only pain." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "But you gave me food, you gave me safety, you gave me a home." The man looked at her, his eyes soft with grief and something warmer. "You gave me a reason to live again," he said. The wind swept through the farmhouse, carrying with it the scent of morning. The war was still out there, the soldiers still searching. But inside these walls, something had changed. An alien who once expected torture and a human who once lived only with sorrow now sat side by side, bound not by chains but by choice. And in their fragile bond, there was strength. The girl closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the fire touch her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in tomorrow. And for the first time, she felt that maybe the galaxy could be more than war and pain. Because in the heart of one human, she had found what she never thought possible. A home